Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we are going to discuss a very important topic, and that is different cases, different scenarios of ocular trauma. Ocular trauma may be, is you can see this photograph, and that is the case of a newborn baby. So ocular trauma may start from birth to the late years of life. Different scenarios. This is the case of globe prolapse resulting from excessive pressure put on the around the orbit during birth by forceps delivery. Here is another case. You can see that this left eye has been prolapsed through the this palpebral fissure as a result of a severe road traffic accident. Another case of globe prolapse, that this globe, optic nerve and all these structures are lying on the cheek of the patient as a result of severe trauma. Another picture of the same patient. So eye injuries are a leading cause of vision loss, only second to cataract. Majority of eye injuries are limited to the ocular surface, but 5% of all injuries may involve the deeper structures. Types of injuries, ocular injuries include physical trauma, physical injuries, electromagnetic or radiation injuries resulting from different types of different scenarios of radiation exposure. And third most common types of injury is the chemical injury, including acid burn, chemical burns, or severe uh, other chemicals that may be instilled into the eyes. Places of ocular injuries, these injuries may occur during different professional jobs, occupational injuries, domestic while working in the home, the child, the ladies involved in some domestic jobs, they may have ocular injuries. Childs are very prone to have these ocular injuries because they are not able to protect their eyes resulting from these severe injuries as a result of sharp objects. Childs oftenly they play with different toys, with objects. They play with knives, scissors, or needles and sticks, and they may cause injuries to each other. Similarly, road traffic accidents are a major cause of ocular injuries. Sports injuries are another example of ocular injuries. Iatrogenic means produced by the physicians during while performing some procedures. They may cause injuries to the ocular structures. Radiation injuries and injuries from civil disturbances and war. As far as epidemiology of the ocular injuries is concerned, young people, about 80% males, 80% of all the ocular injuries are inflicted to the males because they are more exposed to the outdoor activities. And 50% of injuries are related to occupationals while working at the job. 25% of injuries occur at home. Sports injuries are rare, but they may be severe. Similarly, road traffic accidents, they contribute a significant number. Uh, these injuries, ocular injuries, may be the result of blunt injuries. Blunt injury means injuries resulting from some large objects like this ball, tennis ball, football, cricket ball, this fist during fights, and penetrating injuries. Penetrating injuries are the result of some very small particles or very sharp objects. And these penetrating injuries may involve lids and adnexa orbital injuries, ocular injuries, include anterior segment and posterior segment injuries. So far as the examples of ocular injuries are concerned, starting from the anterior to the posterior segments, posterior structures, this subconjunctival hemorrhage is the most common and most benign type of sign of a ocular trauma. इसमें आप देख सकते हैं कि there is a large subconjunctival hemorrhage resulting from blunt trauma. This is another example of this black eye ecchymosis, redness, ballooning. This subconjunctival hemorrhage is a result of blunt trauma. Conjunctival foreign bodies or insects or exposed portion, glass particles, and metallic foreign bodies. They may be large. They may get lodged into the subconjunctival or conjunctival surfaces of the lids. We have to invert the lids to find these foreign bodies. Here is an example of this piece of some insect is embedded into the conjunctival side of upper lid. So this was only this to find out this foreign body was only possible after everting the upper eyelid. Here you can see another foreign body lodged in the on the conjunctival surface of upper eyelid. This is only possible after everting the upper eyelid, and then we can remove these foreign bodies. So these foreign bodies include iron particle, glass particles, gunpowder, piece of gunpowder. They should be removed with caution if they are embedded deeply, and they are usually removed. They can be removed after some topical anesthesia in the patient room or the patient if the patient is cooperative enough, then we can remove these foreign bodies on slit lamp with 25 gauge needle. But iron foreign bodies who are there for some time, they leave a rust ring of rusted material remains there even after we remove the foreign body. We have to remove this ring of the rust after removing the foreign body. And after removal of foreign body, usually we prescribe antibiotics, eye drops, ointment, and cycloplegics, and we do dressing for 2 or 3 days. Here is an example of corneal foreign body. This patient was working on some welding or some um, mechanical workshop, and he got this metallic foreign body, a small piece of iron is stuck onto the cornea and is embedded. And if it is patient comes immediately after the this foreign body, we can remove this foreign body with the tip of the 25 gauge needle after instilling topical anesthetic eye drops. But if it is there for some 2 or 3 days, then there will be a small ring of rest around this metallic foreign body or an foreign body. Then we have to remove the foreign body, and then we have to remove this ring of the rested material. Here, this foreign body is there for some time, and we can see that there is some infiltration of the inflammatory process around the this foreign body. Similarly, corneal abrasions may result by the nails, faced edge of the piece of paper, edge of the file, or during makeup with brushes, or if or during the use of contact lens. These abrasions are diagnosed on fluorescent staining on ceruleum, and we just prescribe these antibiotics, cycloplegics, and we put a pressure patch if there is a large enough abrasion for early healing and early treatment. Similarly, these lids may be involved. Lids may be cut by sharp objects, and this is the proper method to repair the lids. You can see that this is the tarsal plate, and plate is basically the skeleton of the eyelids. We have to first align this skeleton by putting these two sutures. In these two sutures are passed through the this tarsal plate, and these sutures align the structure of the eyelid, and after tightening these two sutures and aligning the cut ends of tarsal plates, we pass these other sutures for the proper repair of the tarsal plate, and then we close these conjunctiva on the inner side and the skin on the outer side. Similarly, there may be cases of cut canaliculus. In this picture, you can see that there is a lid tear involving this lower canaliculus. And if we do not repair this cut canaliculus properly, then there will be scarring cloyed of the canaliculi, and the patient will be having the complaint of continuous epiphora for the rest of his or her life. In these cases, we have to repair the defect along with intubation of the this canalicular system, lacrimal draining system. We have to put a small silicone tube in the canaliculi of these patients, and this tube remains there for 2 or 3 months. And then we remove these tubes after proper canalization and a proper alignment of the canaliculi. If we want to that this patient do not have the complaint of epiphora for the rest of his life. This is another case of ocular trauma. You can see that a pencil pen has gone through the lids into the orbits. This was removed in surgery. Similarly, another patients of ocular trauma resulting from blunt injuries is there is a panda sign involving the blunt trauma involving the both sides. Yes, here you can see, but if there is no obvious trauma or obvious involvement of the lids, and there is this panda sign, this shows that there is a fracture at the base of skull. So this panda sign is an indicator of fracture at the base of skull. So this should not be ignored, and this should be properly investigated, including CT or X-ray of the skull to find out any other traumas. Similarly, this traumatic globe prolapse. Yes, here you can see that as a result of forceps delivery, this globe has been prolapsed from the orbit. You can see that these lids are behind the eyeball. This lower lid and upper lid, they have gone behind the eyeball, and this globe has prolapsed from this orbit. This was a patient brought to our ward and we managed it immediately and his eye was saved. Here is another example of this globe prolapse. Eyeball is intact, optic nerve is intact, extraocular muscles are intact, but as a result of severe and excessive pressure on the this orbit, this globe has prolapsed through the palpebral fissure. And if we reposit this globe as early as possible, we can save the structure and function of the eyeball. This was another patient referred to our department after trauma during cycling. This child had a trauma by the handle of the cycle of his bicycle, resulting in the globe prolapse. This was managed uh, immediately and properly, and we saved the eyeball of these child. Yes, here you can see that this lower lid has been rescued, and this eyeball is being pushed posteriorly, and you can see this child. This is the post-op picture of the same child after 2-3 months, and the globe has been successfully prolapsed with normal vision of of that eyeball. This is another example of globe prolapse resulting from the a case of congenital disorders of Crouzon syndrome. Shallow orbits. This was also discussed in during the orbital lesions, that if these orbits are very shallow and the face of the child is flat face, and these globes may prolapse spontaneously after some minor events like coughing, sneezing, or some small pressure on the orbits. This was also rescued. This child was rescued by pushing back the globe and then stitching the both eyelids in front of the globe. That means res tarsorrhaphy, and we were able to save the eyeball. Similarly, if the object causing the trauma is more than the size of the orbit, more than 5 centimeters size, then there will be severely uh, increased pressure on the globe, and and the floor of the orbit is the weakest point, where this floor of the orbit may rupture into the maxillary sinus lying just beneath the floor of the orbit. Here you can see that the tennis ball has hit on the this orbital margins. There is a severely and sudden increase in the intraorbital pressure, leading to the fracture of the floor of the orbit, pushing the contents of the orbit into the maxillary sinus, and more oftenly, this inferior rectus may get involved in the fracture site, resulting in the this restriction of the ocular movements, especially elevation and depression. So this is called blow fracture of the orbital floor. This 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 is a special type of orbital fracture which is not associated with involvement of the orbital rim injuries. In orbital floor fractures, rim of the orbit remains normal, and this is typically caused by sudden increase the orbital pressure by striking objects which is greater than 5 centimeters in diameter, such as a tennis ball or a fist during the fight. Similarly, lateral wall and roof are strong enough, and usually these bone This roof and lateral wall, they can withstand the pressure of the injuries, but posterior medial part of the floor is the weakest point of the orbital cavity, and that may be fractured. And if the blow is severe enough, fracture may be on the two sides, this floor and the medial wall, where lamina papyratial lies, that may be fractured if the blow is severe enough. In case of blow fractures, you can see here there was a trauma to the right side of this patient resulting in blow fracture, and there is periocular ecchymosis, edema, infraorbital wall anesthesia. Here, this area of the cheek may be anesthetized, may be resulting from the involvement of the infraorbital nerve into the fracture side. Similarly, the elevation and depression of this eye is restricted due to involvement of the inferior rectus muscle within the fracture site. Here you can see that there is anophthalmos, eyeball, because the volume of the orbit has increased, and the orbital contents have prolapsed into the fracture site. So there is significant anophthalmos. Eye becomes smaller, looks smaller because of the increased volume of the orbital cavity. Nasal bleeds may be due to the hemorrhages from the maxillary sinus into the nose. There is subcutaneous emphysema due to collection of airs, subcutaneous and crepitations on palpation of the periocular tissues, and this emphysema may worsen on blowing of the nose, but this should not be attempted because of the danger of spreading infections from the nasal cavity into the orbit. Eye is usually saved in cases of blowed fractures, but if there is very severe trauma, this ocular damage may be there, including subconjunctival hemorrhage, and but a careful ocular examination is mandatory. Similarly, there will be vertical diplopia. If the patient looks down gaze or up gaze, he or she may experience diplopia due to restrictive movements of the restrictive elevation and restricted depression due to involvement of the inferior rectus muscle into the fracture sites. And this fracture site is confirmed, or blowed fracture is confirmed by CT scan, X-ray, or by force reduction test and differential IOP test, or by Hess screen test. We can confirm that there is restriction of both elevation and depression. And this force reduction test is done in abrasion theater. We after proper anesthetic drops, we grasp the muscle, and in this case inferior rectus and superior rectus, and we move the eyeball to the opposite direction, and then by this mean we can guess that the inferior rectus has been entrapped in the fracture site, and this is not relaxing, and we will not be able to move the eyeball in elevation or an up gaze. By CT scan, you can see here that on the left side, this is the orbital cavity, and this is the maxillary sinus, which is empty dot. But on the right side, here is the fracture. This orbital floor has been fractured with the blood and other contents of the orbital cavity going into the maxillary sinus. So here is the this is a case of blowout fracture of the orbital floor with prolapse of the orbital contents into the maxillary sinus. And this is the Hess screen, and you can see that both the elevation and depression of the involved site they are restricted. This is abduction and adductions are normal, but here this I cannot be elevated to the normal level, and it cannot be depressed, or it cannot look downward up to its normal position. This orbital floor fracture is repaired by placing or by putting some artificial material at the fracture site, and we do this subciliary incision. Here we we reach the this fracture site. We elevate the periosteum and entrap tissues and contents of the orbit which have prolapsed into the maxillary sinus. They are removed. This defect is repaired by some synthetic material like this Teflon sheet or by titanium mesh. We close this fracture site, and then we replace the periosteum, and repair the fracture site. And here you can see that after this repair of the floor of the this orbit, this orbital contents are normal and the maxillary sinus is clear. Yes, there may be this blunt trauma of the eye can result in hyphema. Hyphema is basically blood in anterior chamber. If on examination we find that there is blood in the anterior chamber, we call it as a case of hyphema. And this may be this blood may be the result of rupture of the major iris arterial vessels, or the ciliary body, or the rupture of the blood vessel in the angle of the anterior chamber. This hyphema may be microscopic. That means that it's only visible on certain number of examinations. Circulating red blood cells are there. This is called microscopic hyphema is visible with pale light, and this as these blood cells and this blood contents are heavier than the aqueous humor, they settle down and they form a layer of the blood with its upper horizontal flat border on the inferior side of the anterior chamber. Associated injuries with the hyphema may be corneal abrasions, iritis, traumatic mydriasis, traumatic rhabdomyolysis, and injury to the globe structures. Lens may be dislocated posteriorly or anteriorly, and there may be injuries in the posterior segment and the orbit. So, in cases of hyphema, we have to this we have to do a complete and detailed examination of the globe as well. Total hyphema is usually less than 10% of the cases. Partial filling means that one third of the AC is filled with blood, and prognosis depends on the other complications or extent of the other injuries. Here is a case of hyphema. This photograph is taken on slit lamp. You can see that here is the upper level of the blood, and this part of the Anterior chamber has been filled with blood. Yes, this is partial hyphema. This is total hyphema. Total, all the anterior chamber volume is filled with blood. This hyphema may have certain complications, including rebleed, raised intraocular pressure resulting in nerve to the optic nerve, damage to the optic nerve. Similarly, this cornea may be blood stained, resulting from this iron released from the hemoglobin, and optic atrophy resulting from the raised ventricular pressure for prolonged periods of time. So if there is hyphema, we have to monitor the intraocular pressure very closely. If the intraocular pressure is raised after the hyphema, we have to intervene. We have to remove the blood to avoid permanent damage to the optic nerve. But this rebleed is a major concern, and this may occur for ranging from 3 to 30% of the cases. And usually, this rebleed occurs between second to fifth day after injury, and during rebleed, or even if there is no bleed, 50% of the cases with high fever, they develop raised ventricular pressure, or their cornea may be blood stained. If there are very early signs of blood staining of the cornea, we have to intervene also, and we have to remove the blood from the anterior chamber. Here you can see that after resolution of the eye fever, this cornea has become opaque, resulting from the staining of the corneal corneal structures by the iron released from the hemoglobin. So as a result of this blood staining of the cornea becomes hazy, and if it is there, it persists for years. Um, Treatment of hyphema aims is to minimize bleed, hospitalize the patient for proper bed rest, because if the child does not take rest and he keeps on moving or some physical activities, then there are chances of rebleed, and we can put protective sheets to the injured eyes. And if the child is not cooperative enough, or if he is not resting in his bed, we can add the sedatives, or we can patch the both eyes of the child, so that his movements are restricted, and as a result of decreased physical activity, this hyphema may clear from the anterior chamber. We can raise the this head side of the child, and frequent observations reduce the pain by cycloplegic, steroids, oral systemic, or non-aspirin containing analgesics. We have to use this non-aspirin containing analgesic to prevent rebleed, because if we use this antiplatelet drugs for painkillers, they may cause rebleed. There are some other drugs we can use to prevent rebleed, like aminocaproic acid and this transamine injections or capsules. Reduce the intraocular pressure if it is raised after high fever by using anti-glaucoma drugs, topical carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, or oral carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, or oral and IV hyperosmolar agents, or other anti-glaucoma drugs. But if there is corneal staining, or the IOP is not being controlled by this anti-glaucoma drugs, then we have to intervene, and we have to remove the blood immediately to prevent permanent damage to the cornea or to the optic nerve. And we remove this clotted blood from the anterior chamber by paracentesis and irrigation of the anterior chamber by any balanced salt solutions or vinegar lactate. Mm, Similarly, if there is severe trauma to the eyeball, there may be traumatic mydriasis as a result of rupture of the iris sphincter. Sphincter pupillae may get ruptured and resulting in permanent change in the pupillary shape. And this traumatic mydriasis, if it is there, it remains throughout the rest of the life because there is permanent damage to the sphincter pupillae. Similarly, here you can see that there is iridodialysis. This errors which was inserted here has been disinserted from the root, and this is called iridodialysis. And the pupil becomes D-shaped after iridodialysis. So this is another case of iridodialysis where you can see that pupil has become D-shaped. This side becomes straight, and this side is curved, resulting D shape of the pupil. Here is the iridodialysis, and this separation of the iris root from ciliary body is usually associated with hyphema. And if there is large iridodialysis, this may result in monocular diplopia. Patient can see two images, one from the pupil, another from the defect of this iridodialysis. Patient may experience monocular diplopia or polychoria, and these dialysis defects are small. These do not need any treatment. But if the iridodialysis defect is large and it involves and it is causing some symptoms of diplopia or polychoria, then we have to repair these iridodialysis defects. Similarly, traumatic cataract may result from severe trauma to the globe, and this trauma may can take the shape of different types of cataract, like posterior subcapsular cataract or contuent cataracts. And these are examples. Voschius ring that during when there was a sudden trauma, pupil was here, and there is imprint of the pupillary area onto the lens. As a result of severe trauma to the globe, this iris left imprint of its size at the time of trauma, but after the trauma, as a result of mydriasis of these sphincter pupillae rupture, this pupil has been dilated. But this was the actual site of pupillary location at the time of trauma. This is a case of traumatic cataract. Yes, cataract may be there, can be seen here. And here you can see that after penetrating trauma, there was a corneal tear which has been repaired, and you can see the suture. But this tear penetrating trauma has uh, touched it involved the lens, and the lens has become opaque cataract. But this lens may be subluxated a result of severe trauma, rupture of the zonules. The signs of the lens subluxations or rhabdodonesis and phacodonesis, and vitreous may be present in the anterior chamber. And this lens may be subluxated or dislocated into the vitreous lying on the inferior retina, or they may be subluxated into this anterior chamber. Here you can see that there is pupil shape is changed, and this lens has part of the lens, inferior part of the lens has come into the interior chamber through the pupil. Here you can see that intraocular lens after trauma is lying in the inferior vitreous on the retina. This is the haptic of the intraocular lens, and this is the optic of the intraocular lens, which is lying in the inferior vitreous after severe trauma to the globe. And if the lens subluxation is in the anterior chamber, this is an emergency, and we have to remove this subluxated lens from the anterior chamber because it damages the endothelium of the cornea permanently. Yes, coming to the penetrating injury, here you can see a fish hook which has penetrated through the sclera into the eye. Yes, here are other examples of penetrating injuries. Sclera is here the sclera is involved. There is scleral tear with prolapse of the vitreous. Here is a rupture of the sclera just behind the limbus with prolapse of the iris through the wound. Here is an extensive penetrating injury involving the cornea and the sclera. Here's another example of corneal tear. Here you can see that a large hook of the metallic hook has passed through the globe, resulting in severe trauma. And here is another example that this iris and ciliary body has prolapsed through this wound, extensive wound. Yes, another very bad example of trauma is intraocular foreign bodies. When a suspected intraocular foreign body is within the eyeball or in the periocular tissue, it must be localized clinically or radiologically. X-rays, we order the X-rays, this CT scan, ultrasound, AB scans, and MRI is not done in cases of metallic intraocular foreign bodies because in MRI there is very strong field of magnetic during this MRI machine, and this magnetic field can move the metallic intraocular foreign body in different directions, and we have to. But for proper localization of the intraocular foreign body, we have to do these X-rays and CT scans or B scans. Here is an example of B scan, and you can see a small metallic intraocular foreign body lying just within the vitreous cavity. Here is another example of large intraocular foreign body. This is the foreign body, and this is the shadow of that foreign body on B scan. Yes, here is palate within the orbit, the inferior orbital margin. This metallic foreign body is there. Yes, another example of metallic foreign body seen on the CT scan. Yes, another metallic foreign body. This one. Yes, and very rare injury to the globe can cause is optic nerve avulsion. The globe is intact, but as a result of severely increased intraocular pressure, can lead avulsion of the optic nerve from the posterior side of the globe. Here you can see that there is a deep pit, and this optic nerve has avulsed from this sclera lamina cribrosa, and it has gone back. This is there is permanent sphere of the axons of the optic nerve. They have been cut through, and there is no connection between the retina and the optic nerve. This results in permanent blindness as a result of severe blow to the globe when there is optic nerve avulsion. Yes, how can we prevent these all these types of ocular trauma? We should advocate banning the sales of explosive or the tire guns. Keep the sharp objects out of the reach of the children. Protective eyewear should be used during high-risk activities in the industrial settings or in occupational environments. Safety glasses, polycarbonate lenses, and side shield should be used in sports. Different these goggles or these protective eyewear should be used. In face mask or shield should be made of the metallic grids. Helmets in hockey, footballs, and cricket. They should be used. They are used. And they can protect the players from these severe ocular trauma. Similarly, during driving, seat belts should be used so that our face is protected and our eyes are protected. Similarly, thermal burns, thermal injuries to the eyes can occur, but here is some protection that rapid reflex eyelid closure and Bell's phenomena during these thermal injuries when there is fire or there is heat exposure, we close our lids forcefully. This forceful closure of the lids protects our eyes and the Bell phenomena at the same time during closure of these eyeballs protects the globe from direct thermal burns of the flames of the fire. Contact burns from molten metal, boiled water, hot liquids are more likely to cause lids, corneal and subconjunctival or conjunctival injuries, and they may result in corneal or conjunctival abrasion, ulcerations, or perforations, and scarring later on. Similarly, these ultraviolet rays can cause burn to the eyes. These are sources of ultraviolet rays are sun lamps, arc welding, or prolonged outdoor exposure to reflected sunlight, such as in squares or this slow snow blindness can occur. And in during these sportsmen who are skiers and who play in these very snowy areas, they may have this or these hikers or armed forces who are deployed in these glaciers or some other places. They can have this sunlight ultraviolet keratitis, and these patients complain of severe photophobia and irritation, watering, and blepharospore. The corneal epithelium is very sensitive to ultraviolet radiations, and there becomes corneal erosions, epithelial erosions occur, which cause all these symptoms of photophobia, irritation, water, and blepharospasm. And if we examine these patients on slit lamp, there will be punctate epithelial erosions as a result of burns after prolonged exposure of hours to the ultraviolet radiations. And but the treatment is very simple. We add cycloplegics, mild steroids, antibiotic ointments with dressing for 3 4 days, and we this dressing remains there for 3 4 days. And when we remove this dressing, these punctate epithelial erosions are healed. The patient's symptoms are gone. So this was all about ocular trauma and trauma of the physical trauma and the radiation trauma. And the chemical injuries are there, and that needs some another lecture, because chemical injuries are very severe, and they cause very severe injuries, and they may end up blindness if not properly treated. So next time we will discuss this chemical injuries, chemical trauma to the eyes. Thank you very much.